Hello and welcome to Films and That, the show where we talk about films that usually don't get talked about. My name's Rob Turnbull.
And my name's Sam Hall.
And today we are talking about F.W. Murnau's The Last Laugh, or if you're German, Die letzte Mann. Murnau's 1924 film follows the life of a simple doorman as his world comes crashing down around him when he is forced into retirement from his physically demanding job. This review contains spoilers. Sam, tell us a bit more about Murnau.
Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau was one of German Expressionist's most prominent directors. Most famous films include Nosferatu, Sunrise, The Last Laugh, and Faust, a version of Faust he did. Later in his life he moved to America to continue making films there, but unfortunately after his last film, Taboo, he was involved in a car accident in 1931, and it was quite a tragic loss really. He was pretty young as directors go. And if anything, I think he can be considered as one of the greats, certainly one of the greatest silent film directors of all time.
And this is one of my favourite silent films, actually. It is a great piece of work.
I think, yeah, it really stands out as German Expressionist films go. I'm going to keep on saying German Expressionism, you know, do we need to mention that at all?
So, because it's silent film, you can't get the same amount of emotion through the dialogue that you would with obviously a film that had audio. So a lot of the emotion and what was going on in the film was portrayed by the actors' faces, the costumes, the sets, and this definitely plays a part in The Last Laugh.
Yeah, particularly with the lead, Emil Jennings. I mean, if you want to Google Expressionism more, you know, you can look into things like Edvard Munch's Scream, but you can Google that. So yeah, let's talk about the lead.
Lead, he's great in this. I really like him. He's probably the best thing about the film, I would have said.
I think the film is him, isn't it? Yeah. It's so centred around his role and his performance. I'd say he starts the film out like a sort of a Santa Claus type figure, but also a representation of that old German, Prussian, proud sort of Hindenburg type character as well. A big smile on his face, looks like he likes chocolate a lot, smoking cigars, but still a nice guy. He's portrayed as a pillar in his community. So
he's really well respected in his local kind of cul-de-sac, the building he lives in. Everyone respects him as he goes past because he's wearing this really fancy suit. As he's got this quite a comfortable job as a doorman in this quite expensive hotel. It's
very pristine, looks after his looks and brushes his hair.
He's always combing his moustache and he's always taking good care of himself. His job is very physically demanding and he's approaching that age when he just can't do it as well as he could. So he loses his job, he gets replaced by someone else and he goes to work as a toilet attendant. So what he ends up doing is stealing the clothes he used to wear and pretending that he still has this job when he goes back to his community. I guess he doesn't want to lose that respect of the people that he lives with.
Yeah, but it doesn't all go to plan, unfortunately.
Ultimately, they find out that he's been lying, and they then end up thinking that he's been lying throughout his entire job and he's just been working as a toilet attendant for his entire life.
He's already content with life and has been content with life for a very long time. So all that content is being uprooted. And there's another subplot. I believe it's implied that he's living with his niece and she's going off to get married. So obviously he's very happy for her, but very sad that she's leaving. So to lose two big parts of his life in one go, it's like, you know, a completely distraught thing for him.
So when he is up, when the character is happy, he's really jovial and he's really a joy to be around. But then when the character loses his job and then becomes really depressed, he's a very gaunt figure. He loses the kind of the plushness of him and he becomes very scraggly, and it's all the acting is just in how he looks.
Tends to be quite melodramatic, as a lot of silent film was back then. But you're meant to get everything from his physical performance throughout the film, you know, particularly after the moment that he finds out, you know, his constant expression is one of fear. He's frozen with fear and sadness. Everything, suddenly a man who was so energetic has become a wreck. Who can barely move, you know. When he does his job as a toilet attendant, you know, he doesn't put any effort into it at all. He becomes completely slothful. much to the chagrin and annoyance of his customers.
It is very binary. When he's down, he's so low and it's so depressing, but when he's up, he's really jovial. Do you think at the time this was for mainstream audiences that wanted a bit of sadness and a bit of happiness kind of all mixed into one?
Oh yeah, I think a lot of people look at silent films now and say, oh, only a pretentious film arse could enjoy that. That's not the case at all. These films were made for ordinary people. Murnau, I think in particular, was very good at making films for everyone. There's no, it doesn't have to be intellectual. I mean, the film is intellectual in its construction, but not in what it's trying to represent.
It's a very simplistic story.
It's something that everyone who doesn't die young has to go through. Old age. And one of the things I really like about it is the fact that there's no villain really apart from old age. Although he is removed from his job and put into a menial job, in a way it's a kindness, because they could have just sacked him.
Yeah, and he can't do his job anymore. He's physically unable to do it. So it's not like they're being mean to him.
Answers. Yeah, exactly. There's no easy answers for him to get out of that situation. So I kind of like that. It's the crushing inevitability of life. There are quite a few good films actually that deal with that subject of old age. Tokyo Story is probably a good example. But you can look them up yourselves if you want.
Yeah, look them up yourselves.
Yeah, look them up yourselves. Yeah.
So this film has the first, or supposedly first, I believe it is, the first use of a dolly shot in a film. They used a child's cradle being pulled along by these makeshift railway lines, but it adds just a lot of depth of movement within certain shots. Because this was the first one to do it, it did go on to inspire people like Hitchcock to put movement in his shots.
Do you mean a child's pram?
They move around a lot and kind of reposition. There's a lot of thought that's gone into that. There's one when he's drunk and he's like swaying around and the camera seems to be moving with him. And I think that works quite well. There's another one when he's having a dream and there's a kind of a really smeary effect on the lens. And I don't think that works as well.
No, it's they're trying to get the whole, it's a dream sequence thing. So I don't know where people get that hazy idea that, a dream is hazy. It's not quite hazy, is it? It's quite clear when you're in it. Strange choice, but then it was Murnau. I think, he achieved more than we did.
Well,
probably ever will.
Speak for yourself.
There is quite a significant amount of use of lighting, which was quite common in German Expressionism, to tell a story visually. But one moment that stuck in my mind was when we witness the set, which is the street, the cul-de-sac where he lives. In order to show that day had turned into night and the sun had risen again, you just see the light changing, rather than one of us being sort of using editing to tell this story. And in that respect, I think it's a very visual film.
Yeah, and that obviously comes out of it being a silent film. Usually you get intertitles within a silent film, but The Last Laugh does it very creatively. So they would always be diegetic intertitles, in that they will be in the world of the film. So in one instance, the character is reading the letter of his dismissal, and all you need to know about this dismissal is on screen but in his hands. Another moment is when his niece is having a wedding. She bakes a cake and she pipes words onto the cake. And that is
to signify at that point that she's having a wedding, so that we know that that's going to happen.
But at no point is the action interrupted to bring up a kind of a title, which does take you out of the film. If a title screen comes up and says this is what the cameras are saying, it does take you out of the film a bit more. So I guess that's what they were trying to do, to kind of ground it more in reality a bit and just bring it into the diegetic world. The film has a pretty depressing climax when the main character ends up... Does he actually die in the washroom?
Well, that was the intention, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The fake ending... the real ending is the fake ending. Because it didn't happen. Because they did add on the fake ending in the end. Let's forget about calling it a fake ending. Okay, Samuel.
So we should explain that So they wanted a happy ending to be tacked onto this film. Murnau and the screenwriter Mayer weren't very happy about that. So they added on a happy ending to appease the studio, but they made it so unrealistic that it almost fits outside of the actual film that they wanted to tell. So the main character, after he is alone and kind of depressed in his washroom, just suddenly becomes very rich after someone leaves all their money to him.
Yeah, apparently they had a weird, absurd clause in their will that said that whoever they die in the arms of, that's the person that's going to get all their money, which again emphasises, the absurdity of the ending. But it's nice.
But it goes from having a very simplistic story and the up and down of this character's struggle to suddenly he's fine and he's rich and all his problems are sorted, and it's
a nice little sequence like something out of Christmas Carol, when he's eating the most absurdly ridiculous looking cake you've ever seen, like gâteau thing, like a little building made of chocolate and cake. It's schmaltzy, isn't it? It's tacky.
It gives you a warm feeling at the end of the film,
and it kind of proves what I'm saying. These films were for the ordinary person, really. And most people really didn't want to go away from a film where someone just dies in a washroom.
It seems to revel in the laziness as well. It seems to revel in the absurdity of what's just happened. One
of the two real intertitles, that weren't diegetic. The second one is, in real life, this man would have died. But the writer, the author of this story, has decided to take pity on him, so to immediately, implement that it is fictional, It doesn't detract from the story and the point of the film, but at the same time, you can still go away smiling. Right, so what did you think of The Last Laugh then? Final thoughts?
It's a great little film. It really stands up today, I think. A lot of silent cinema, it tends to, because there's nothing to kind of grab your interest a lot of the time, you do find it a bit tedious. But it really makes you want to stay around this character because he's so jovial when he's happy. He's such an interesting character to be around, and it's just a great little film to watch.
He's very likeable. I think really everyone should give silent cinema a go. Don't just dismiss it out of hand. Of course, you could have a bad luck. You could end up watching some sort of Soviet montage film, which, although I think they're very good, are not necessarily as easily accessible as most silent films. But
they're a bit more hard hitting. Whereas this it was, like you said, it was a mainstream film, really.
Yeah. I sort of see it as like a Robert Zemeckis or a Tom Hanks film. There is a schmaltzy element, but there's still tragedy interwoven into that. But I'd really recommend giving this one a go. For me, it's very poignant and very beautiful, and I'd go with saying that it's one of my favourite silent films as well.
That's it for this week on Films on That. Thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Okay.
Do you know what happened the other day? Sorry, when I said my name's Sam Hall, one of our engineers rang up and he said, "Can you hear that?" I said, "What?" And he puts his phone close to his ear, and it's Johnny Cash going, "My name is Sam Hall." He said, "I wish Johnny Cash did a song about me."